This is the parallax effect using the camera tool in Animate. This is what the project's going to look like. And before we get started, we're going to take a look at the Photoshop file. First thing I did was I separated the foreground from the background. So the idea is that this is going to be moving back and forth. So if I slide this way, you can kind of see that it's starting to do the parallax. Then underneath you can see the other thing that I did is I slowly whittled away at the sculpture in the background so it gave me some sliding room. Now the other thing I'm planning on doing in Animate is I'm going to scale the foreground and the background differently, and that also is going to give me a little bit more wiggle room. So I do have to transform, and I'll make this a little bit larger. That gives me even more wiggle room to move around. And I want to do that in Animate, not here, because then I can take advantage of the camera for the parallax effect. Okay, so the other thing that I did is I renamed the foreground image and the background image with the PNG files. That way I can take advantage of the generate option into an image asset. Once I do that, what it's done is on the desktop is it created this folder with the images already set up at the resolution that I need and the size that I need. So the resolution on this, if we go double check on that, if we go to the image size, you can see that the height is 300. It's a little bit bigger than the 250, and this is obviously a lot wider than the 300. And the reason why I want this bigger as a number is because I plan on making the background smaller, and if it starts off too big, or rather too small, I'll end up clipping the top of the image, and I don't want to do that. I want to keep it more or less at the same size. So that's generating my images, and again, background is separated separately, and then I manipulated with Photoshop with the healing brush and clone tool so that you can't tell that the image wasn't part of that original format. Okay, so we'll go ahead and launch Animate. We're going to go with the 300 by 250. Everything checks out okay. Canvas is fine. Create that. We're going to change our speed here, frames per second, to 30 frames per second. And I'll back away just a bit, not that much. Actually, maybe I do want that much. Okay, so I'll go ahead and do an import to stage. There are my files. They're going to come in out of order because they're coming in alphabetically. They're both selected right now. If you're not sure, click and drag all the way across. Command-Shift-D distributes them to their own layers. We're going to put the back in the back. And we're going to rename this top layer Actions. Okay, so this is way too high, so we'll just slide that down. You can see there's the old one, and we'll let it butt up against this one in here. So let me zoom in a little bit more. Okay, so I'm kind of paying attention in here where this back slab pedestal shows up, so that's actually pretty good right there. So I'm going to do a select all, and I'm going to start to kind of lay it out where I want it to be. Okay, so I'm only paying attention to this guy in here. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Alright, so I need to get this background image a little bit smaller. So while that's selected, I'm going to then call the camera tool. I'm going to click on the option that gives me some depth, the depth panel, and move this over here. And I want the background to slide a little further back. And I'm paying attention to where this thing lays out. And I can still select that and move it where I want it. So that's where everything's going to start. Okay, so I got a little bit of an overlap there. Not crazy about that. Let's see if I can move that a little lower. I want to go too low, so now I need to move this up higher. There we go. Okay, so everything's going to start there, or actually end there. So I'll go ahead, this animation is going to last, this part of the animation is going to last for 3 frames. I'm going to do an F5 here, and then what I want to do is I want to animate the camera, so I'll click on the camera layer and I'll do an insert motion tween. I want it to end in this position, so I'm going to go ahead and give myself an F6 there. There we go, got a keyframe there now. And now I can slide over to the front of the animation and I can worry about putting in my animation here. So in here, grab the camera tool, and I'm going to slide this over this way with the shift key down. Now you don't have to move it this way. The other option is you can move it up and down. That also gives you the parallax. You just have to be careful about how all of this overlaps. But anyway, I want this to come over. This is going to come off frame over here. I don't want to have too much white area over here, so I need to make sure that that's covered in like that. So that's where everything's going to start. And let me close this. And so if I hit return here, you can see what it's going to start to look like. And there's the parallax effect. So now we're just going to add some text in here just to make it look like a real bona fide banner. So I'll come over here to the front image, and I'm going to add a layer. And I'll go ahead and call this CSUF. And here everything happens, then it's going to come to a stop. And I think what I'll do is I'll go back to the first frame and I'll give myself an ease. So I'll make that 50. So it's going to move a little faster and then come to a slowdown. So it'll look kind of like that. And then it comes for a soft landing. Okay, so this is where this part of the animation ends. I want the whole animation to last 4 seconds. So I'll click over here, give myself an F5. And so after it moves into place, it's going to stay still here. Here's where I want to bring in my text. So I'm going to come right underneath here where it stops. And I'm going to give myself an F6. Okay, and here I'll go ahead and type in my CSUF. So I want this to be white text. Grab the type tool. Come over here and type in CSUF. And I'll just make it a little bit bigger. Okay. So I'm just kind of eyeballing it right now. And I'm not worried about kerning or spacing or anything. I just want to get that in there. All right, so now I'm ready to start to animate. Text doesn't animate too well. You won't be able to do any alphas or anything with it. So I have to convert it into just raw line artwork. So I'm going to do a Command B for break apart. The first Command B takes the individual letters into their own text boxes, and then second Command B turns it into an outline. And now while it's an outline, I'm going to give myself an F8, and I'm going to make this into the CSUF MC for movie clip. Make sure that that's a movie clip. Okay, so hit OK. And now I'll come over here and give myself an F6. Whoops, I forgot to make it into an animation. So now I'll go ahead and insert motion tween. Now I'll go over here and do an F6. Okay, so come back over here, click on here, click on my color effects, go to alpha, crank that down to nothing, go to the very last frame, click on there, make sure it's selected. Okay, got it. Alpha 100%. So it's going to fade in. Okay, so now I need a stop. So here's my actions. So I'm going to come back over here and do an F6. Oops. Got to click over here. F6. Now right click, actions, type in this, period, stop, open and close parentheses, semicolon. So that's going to stop that there. So let's run this. don't have the link yet, but that's the way it's supposed to work. Now I need the Mickey Mouse glove. Okay, let's see that again. Okay, so slide over here, right up above CSUF. I'm going to add a new layer, and I'll go ahead and call this link. And in here, what I want to do now on that first layer is I want to create a a box that's a little bit larger than my artboard. Okay, I'll double click on that. I'll do an F8, make that into a button, and I'll call it CSUF link. Okay, and now program it. Go to the code snippets. Go to Actions in HTML5 Canvas, Actions, click to go to Web, double click on that. Wants to give it an instance name, that's fine. It just called it button number 1 right there, that's fine. Change this to Fullerton and change that to EDU. And the blank, oops, I'm going to call that CSUF. That'll keep it from constantly opening in brand new windows. So get rid of all this gray stuff, don't need that. Okay, so I'm just going to test it. The green box is going to show up in front of everything. This should get me now to Cal State Fullerton's page. Okay, notice how it's moving. Notice how that moves across with it. That's because it's the link is staying in its relative position when this thing was created. It's just another layer, another object. But what I can do is I can, actually that should be right there. What I can do is select this and click on this little guy here, and that'll lock the link to the camera. And now I can move this and line it up. And I'll just move it with the cursors. And now where the camera goes, that green box goes. So now if we do a command return, you'll see that the thing is constantly covered with the green box. And if I click on it, wait for it to end, and I click on it, still gets me to the Cal State Fullerton page. So now the last thing to do on the green box is to hide the green box. So I'm going to double click and drill into the button and grab this layer and drag it to the very back. Now come back over here, makes it into a light blue, but I'm in business now. Command return, loads up, fades in, the little Mickey Mouse glove shows up. If I reload, it's still a hit area even before the animation comes to an end. And so even after it comes to an end, everything works and gets me to that spot. If this blue box bothers you, all you have to do is hide that on the link, so you don't have to see it. And that's the setup. So now I'll go ahead and do a save. And I'll go ahead and call it Parallax. And I'll save it there. And now I'll do a command return. And it saves all my code. And if we go to the desktop now, here you can see I've got the HTML, everything I need, and my images folder is in here. And it's one big giant PNG file. And it's one big giant PNG file that has my artwork that brings it in. Okay, so that's the setup. I hope that made some sense to you. But it's just one option when you decide you want to work with images for the parallax effect.